You might have seen on Discovery or National Geographic Channel a predator, such as a lion or tiger hunting prey, chasing deer. Those few moments when the deer's life is hanging by a thread until the tiger finally runs out of energy and stops, and the deer escapes. In that moment, you might breathe a sigh of relief, or you might be disappointed at the tiger's failed attempt. But the deer, when the danger has passed, when it has escaped death, it will instinctively do something to naturally release trauma from its body, go through a physical process of shaking or trembling. And this is what prevents it from developing what we humans refer to as post-traumatic stress. Peter Levine, a trauma healing expert, he says that we as human beings have the exact same capacity for release as animals in the wild. But other than indigenous shamanic cultures where this is practiced regularly, we rarely go through this process. It seems that animals follow their intuition in a way that we humans are not always encouraged to. Trauma is painful, and it's a fact of life. Mark Epstein, author of the book The Trauma of Everyday Life, he says that some traumas are explicit, such as loss, death, war, natural disasters, accidents, disease, abuse. Others are more subtle, such as emotional deprivation in childhood or developmental challenges, systemic discrimination. And still others, such as feelings of disconnection, estrangement, lack of fulfillment, they seem to come out of nowhere. Whatever form of trauma, all human beings do experience it. It happens to everyone sooner or later. And yet, there is little awareness about trauma and the consequences of unresolved trauma. It is said that trauma is perhaps the most avoided, ignored, belittled, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering. When we experience trauma, a part of us shuts down because it can't handle the pain, and we disconnect from that part. But even though we are no longer aware of it, it continues to affect us from below the level of conscious awareness. It's like this frozen wound which continues to ask for attention and healing through the psychological and physical distress it causes. Unacknowledged and unresolved trauma can lead to a lot of suffering, physical and psychological illness, heart disease, diabetes, immune disorders, depression, different types of addiction, chronic fatigue, other chronic conditions. Post-traumatic stress negatively affects our health, our relationships, our work lives, our home lives, the communities we live in. And simply by recognizing our trauma, by acknowledging it, we begin to invite a sense of healing and embark on a journey of post-traumatic growth. Experts say that even though trauma is a fact of life, it doesn't have to be a life sentence. The paradox of trauma is that it has both the power to destroy and the power to transform and resurrect. All of us have the innate capacity to heal our trauma. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, he says that the natural healing force within each one of us is the greatest force in getting well. And we can learn practices and evidence-based skills which help us harness that healing force within us, help us become more self-aware, help us relate to our pain with more self-compassion, create an inner holding environment that supports reconnection, reintegration. through these skills and practices, we can really leverage the power of the mind-body connect and take an active role, play an active role in our ongoing healing. And we can and we must also seek the power of human connection, because we need each other to support our healing process. One of my mindfulness teachers often says, we're not meant to do this alone. Now, one of the practices that can support healing and transformation is the practice of expressive meditation. And I'll be talking about this practice in the video. Movements such as shaking, dancing, it allows us to do something physical that releases tension from the body. And research shows that expressive meditation techniques decrease anxiety, improve sleep, they balance mood, reduce fear. And they can really pave the way for releasing, feeling, and healing the pain of unresolved trauma. I wasn't aware of expressive meditation until I came across the Center for Mind-Body Medicine's website. And I was browsing through the page which offers free resources for healing. And I came across this video on expressive meditation and wanted to explore it. I started practicing it along with some other mind-body skills that are also available on that page. And I'm aware now that that practice of expressive meditation, perhaps also along with other mindful movement and body awareness practices, that practice literally shook up and released the stuck energy of unresolved trauma inside me in a way that finally allowed me to feel it, begin to work with it and heal it. I wasn't even aware of the extent of unresolved trauma I carried until I discovered what I now call the volcano in my belly. A burning hot ball of suppressed rage filled with unresolved pain. I remember my first therapist saying to me, "Arwa, you have a volcano inside you." But I just couldn't find it. Expressive meditation and mind-body skills helped me connect with that volcano, that ball of rage inside me, and work with its powerful energy, learn to discern between its intelligence and its reactivity in a way that humbled me, it helped me reclaim my power, helped me heal. So mindful movement practices such as expressive meditation can really go a long way in getting the stuck and frozen energy of unresolved trauma unstuck, so that we can begin to metabolize it, help it move through us and out, release it, and in that process transform. It is said that the only way out is through. The only way out of suffering is through it. I'll be sharing 3 points related to trauma, healing, and expressive meditation. So, coming to the first point, trauma, it's real. It really affects our body and mind. It causes damage to the body-mind. Now, if we think of our body-mind as an automobile, and 2 branches of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, as the gas pedal, the accelerator, and the brake pedal. Now, one of the functions of the autonomic nervous system, which functions below the level of conscious awareness automatically, is to maintain internal stability while adjusting to changing external conditions. It has to adapt to environmental changes, maintain a state of balance. What happens is when this autonomic nervous system perceives a threat, whether it is real or imagined, it activates what is known as the flight or fight response in our bodies. It's also known as the stress response. And the purpose of this flight or fight response is to help us survive the danger. So this is like stepping on the gas pedal. It's like go, 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 fight or run, flee. And in this state, the heart rate goes up, blood pressure rises, digestion system shuts down. It's no time to digest food right now. Pupils dilate to maximize vision. And once the danger has passed, the brake pedal is pushed. And this activates the relaxation response, also known as rest and digest, tend and befriend. So both these parts of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, the gas pedal, the brake pedal, they work together in sync to maintain a healthy momentum and balance as we navigate life situations and challenges. And this is a dynamic process. It's called homeostasis, and it's vital for our survival and well-being. And the state of balance that we regain time and again, it's vital for us to thrive. It's the optimal state for learning and growth. When we experience trauma or chronic stress, which is also a form of trauma, what happens is that the fight or flight response goes on overdrive until eventually it shuts down completely. The automobile shuts down. It goes into freeze mode. And this happens when the threat is too big or too much, or if the stress is prolonged. And what actually happens is that there's a flood of emotion. And our ability to cope with this, to feel what we are feeling, is overwhelmed. We are not able to. So a circuit breaker is thrown by our system so that we don't die, we stay alive without becoming completely psychotic, without short-circuiting our brains. But the cost of this blown circuit is emotion frozen in the body. Unresolved autonomic nervous system activity is one definition of trauma. And it's below the level of conscious awareness, but from there, it causes havoc. It leads to changes in the brain structure. As I mentioned earlier, many physical and psychological illnesses. It narrows our window of tolerance. Now, window of tolerance is a term first introduced by psychologist Dan Siegel. And it refers to a state of body-mind, a state of stimulation, arousal, in which we are able to function optimally, thrive, that supports our well-being and thriving. We're able to learn effectively, combine work and play, relate well to ourselves and others. And trauma and chronic stress really narrow this window. And when it becomes narrow, even small changes or triggers in the environment can literally throw us off balance. It can lead to hyperarousal or hypoarousal. Hyperarousal or intense reactivity. The physical symptoms of this are increase in heart rate, difficulty breathing, sweating, muscular tension. Mental processes are increased repetitious thoughts, rumination, racing mind, anxiety. Hypoarousal is a kind of numbing out, where we're not really feeling anything. There's a flat affect. And so chronic stress and unresolved trauma can lead to anxiety, depression, lower immune system functioning, unhealthy habit patterns, addictions, even diabetes and cancer. Experts say that Although humans rarely die from trauma, if we do not resolve it, our lives can be severely diminished by its effects. Some people even describe this as a living death. Coming to the second point, and here's the hope. The damage caused due to chronic stress and trauma is reversible. The brain, when the brain changes due to trauma, it can re-change due to healing trauma. The ability of the brain to reorganize itself, to restructure itself by forming new neural connections is called neuroplasticity. The brain is moldable like plastic. And this is one of the most important alterations in the scientific view of the brain since its anatomy was sketched. So the brain is moldable like plastic. And plastic needs to be soft when it's molded. Similarly, the brain has to be in a certain condition for it to restructure itself. And certain skills and practices help us create those conditions. We can help the brain change its own structure and function through intention, attention, and attitude. Now, experience-dependent neuroplasticity refers to how experience affects the brain structure and function, depending on what we are experiencing and how we are experiencing what we are experiencing. Our brain, neural connections are formed in our brain. Now, by relating to our experience of trauma, our suffering that is stored in the body with intentional kindness, we can support the brain to restructure itself. Rick Hansen, an expert neuropsychologist, he says that we can use the mind to change the brain to change the mind. Now, in the context of body awareness and expressive meditation, we can tweak this and say that we can bring the mind into the body to help the mind heal. We can set the intention to pay attention to the body, to all that is arising in the body, with an attitude of kindness. And there are practices and skills which can help us do exactly that. Relate to whatever we are experiencing, moment to moment. No matter what is happening outside us or inside us, we relate to it with mindfulness, without judgment, with kindness, with discernment, seeing it for what it is. Seeing what is healthy, what is unhealthy, what is wholesome, what is unwholesome, what is wise, what is unwise, without beating ourselves up for it. And these practices and skills can help us cultivate a sense of balance and safety in the body-mind, widen our window of tolerance, support our healing and deep well-being, and actually restructure our brain. Coming to the third and last point, meditation. Studies have shown that meditation can lead to changes in the brain structure. Now, when we hear the word meditation, some of us might think of a monk sitting in stillness in the mountains. But there are other forms of meditation, many different forms of meditation. Meditation that involves movement, certain kinds of movement, is called expressive meditation. Indigenous cultures around the world practice expressive meditation in healing rituals. And these forms of expression, bodily expression, they bring powerful healing benefits that can help us heal trauma, recover from the effects of unresolved trauma. Moving the body, literally moving the body, helps shake us out of the freeze response and allows the healing to begin, allows the body to release what has become stuck and begin to process it organically. shaking, dancing, fast breathing, jumping, shouting, whirling, pounding the chest, laughing. All of these represent different types of expressive meditation. And all of these, through the body, through movement of the body, through paying attention to the body with openness, kindness, can support transformation of anger, grief, fear into wisdom and compassion. So human beings can and do shake off the effects of overwhelming events, the effects of trauma. There are particular types of spontaneous shaking, trembling, breathing, which helps us release trauma, just the way animals do in the wild, and return to our lives in a balanced state, in a state that supports our deep well-being. So, in conclusion, just to wrap it up, trauma is real. It's a fact of life. It happens to everyone. And unresolved trauma can cause a lot of distress, psychological, physical, and there are ways to heal trauma. Each one of us has the innate capacity within us to heal. How miraculous is that? We can learn skills and practices that can help us harness that capacity within us. And one of those skills and practices is expressive meditation. I'll end with a quote by trauma expert Peter Levine, a very powerful and deeply touching quote. He writes that, "I have come to the conclusion that human beings are born with an innate capacity to triumph over trauma. I believe not only that trauma is curable, but that the healing process can be a catalyst for profound awakening, a portal opening to emotional and genuine spiritual transformation." He goes on to write that, "I have little doubt that as individuals, families, communities, and even nations, we have the capacity to learn how to heal and prevent much of the damage done by trauma. In doing so, we can significantly increase our ability to achieve both our individual and collective dreams." Thank you for your kind attention. Hi. In this video, I'd like to share a little bit about the actual practice technique of expressive meditation, the way I've learned it through the Center for Mind-Body Medicine. I've learned two techniques, the shaking and moving meditation and the chaotic breathing meditation. Now, both these consists of three parts. The first part is where in the shaking and moving meditation, we move the body, shake it in whatever way it wants to shake and move. It could be subtle, shaking the legs and the arms. There's no specific steps to it. It's just free movement, but dynamic and expressive. You could shake the head, the hands. It could be subtle. It could be very strong and dynamic. And that for someone just starting to practice, that could be maybe for 3 to 5 minutes. And what is supportive during this particular component of the practice is music that's dynamic and upbeat, and music that says, go, 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 and kind of supports the movement of the body. And it can be tiring. And so during this particular component and throughout the practice, we are setting the intention to pay attention to the body with an attitude of openness. So if thoughts come and you find yourself thinking about something, if you find your mind wandering to something you have to do later today, or something that happened yesterday, or some plan that you have. Just when you notice that, simply bring attention back to the body very gently and kindly without being hard on yourself at all. That's an important component of the practice, the gentleness towards ourselves, towards our body, towards everything that's here, even the suffering. So coming back to the first component, a few minutes of shaking, moving, and then the next component for a minute or so consists of being still, standing still. The music is turned off, just breathing and noticing the body, noticing whatever sensations are there in the body. And many times after practicing this dynamic kind of movement, there's an acute sense of stillness and energy in the body. So you might notice tingling, or you might notice some vibration, or whatever is arising, whatever is present, just being with that, being with the breath for about a minute. And then the third component consists of soft music or fun music, uplifting music. And in this last part of it, we are encouraged to let the music move us. So if the music, listening to the music and allowing the body to move whatever way it wants to move in response to this listening of the music, moving with the music. Okay, so these are the three components of expressive meditation. To recap, the first component, maybe 3 to 5 minutes when someone's starting off, and then it can increase or sometimes be even less, consists of more dynamic movement. I won't demonstrate the chaotic breathing right now, but because that'll take up, that'll need more time. So in the shaking and moving, you're just moving your body, just moving the legs. Next component for a minute, being still, paying attention to the body and breath. Third component, again, for another 3-4 minutes, soft music with some song that is uplifting and cheerful, or whatever you prefer, but something that's relaxing and really moving with the music, allowing the body to move in whatever way it wants to move. Okay, so these are the three components. Now, the bottom line here, as in all practices, is to take care of yourself, to listen to the body. So if at any point it feels that you need to pause, you can pause, sit down, just taking care of yourself at all times, not pushing yourself in a way that doesn't feel comfortable and doesn't feel in alignment with what the body needs right now. Of course, sometimes we do need to gently nudge ourselves because we're not used to something, and that brings up resistance. So that gentle nudging is encouraged, but not kind of a rigid having to follow something. There are no strict rules here. These are guidelines. Also, one more thing I'd like to say for people in wheelchairs as well. They can practice upper body movement, whatever way is possible, and it can still have the same effect of release, and then settling in to stillness. I think that's about it. And I will be sharing a link to the web page, the free resources web page of the Center for Mind-Body Medicine, which has a video of this practice where Dr. James Gordon, the founder of the center, is leading this practice with a group of people, and he's explaining it as well, so you might want to hear it there as well, and then practice along. And in all of these practices, all mind-body skill practices, meditative practices. The encouragement is to approach these practices with an open heart and open mind, with a sense of curiosity, a sense of wanting to experiment and play with it, rather than having to achieve something or having to feel a certain way. Whatever experience arises, noticing it, being aware of it, that is part of the practice. Just being aware of it and continuing to explore and experiment, giving it some time to see how the body mind is responding. Yeah, so all the best with your experiment and exploration. I wish you lots and lots of healing. Thank you for your kind attention.
Hi, Arva.
Hi, Shivani. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So, I actually saw your video of expressive meditation, and it was really insightful. Um, I saw how you really mentioned that it is connected to trauma and healing. My question to you is that for someone who doesn't um, know that they have experienced trauma, how does expressive meditation still benefit them?
So, thank you for that question. And as I mentioned in the talk, that there's little awareness about trauma, even though trauma is part of the human experience. It happens to everyone. So, what's coming up for me now as I hear you ask this question is that to benefit from this meditation practice, one doesn't need to know how the trauma has come, or whether I'm traumatized, or what is the source of the trauma. So, supposing if someone were to see this talk and just, they feel like, okay, let me explore this, and they start practicing it. The body knows when it feels good. When there's a release in the body, there's a sense of that relaxation, that let go, which is a feel good. So, in that sense, then it becomes an intrinsic motivation to practice. So, regardless, to answer again in a nutshell, whether someone knows that they're traumatized or not, whether someone knows their source of trauma or not, but if they're practicing this sincerely with some commitment, then it's likely that their body mind will experience the benefits with consistent and gentle practice.
So, just from talking about the benefit of the expressive meditation, if I were to compare the approach of traditional meditation, how different is that? And will there be different benefits that I would experience from this one?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say traditional, because that's like something that's coming down from generations. And expressive meditation is actually known to be the oldest form of meditation. So it is very traditional. But if you talk about sitting practice versus expressive meditation practice, and I'm really glad you asked this question, because from my experience, I can share that sitting practice can be difficult for many people, especially if they have experienced immense trauma. Because the moment we sit down and pay attention, everything that's been pushed away comes up and says, whoa. And there's too much restlessness or other factors that might make sitting meditation very challenging. And so, expressive meditation, including mindful movement practices, but specifically also expressive meditation, can be a doorway into meditative practice, which is a little more easeful, which might not seem so daunting. And so, another aspect of that is that in order for trauma to heal, in order for the energy that has been stuck to start flowing through us and out, it needs to get unstuck first. And expressive meditation is one of the benefits of this kind of practice, intense dynamic movement of the body or breath, is that it really shakes us up from the inside, literally, so that those stuck energies start to, get unstuck. And that's the first step towards then the energies flowing through us and out and resolving and healing. And so it's often encouraged that for sitting meditation, one way to approach it is to start with this kind of an expressive meditation practice and then slowly transition into the sitting practice. So the body is maybe a little more readier to settle once it's being shaken.
How important is incorporating creative expressions such as sound, art, um, and movement in the expressive meditation in the healing process? So, if you can just talk a little bit about that.
Sound, art, and movement. So movement is very much an intrinsic part of it. And I'm glad you asked about sounds, because I've heard Dr. James Gordon, the founder of the Center for Mind Body Medicine, when he explains this practice and even when he guides groups through it, he says this actually, that let any sounds that want to come, let them come out. So there's a part of us that's actively engaging in the process. There's a part of us that's also listening to the body and responding through that active engagement. It's engaging with the body. What does the body want? How does it want to move? How does it want to shake? What sounds does it want to make? And so it's creative in that sense. There's no rule book to it in terms of this is the movement or these are the sounds. It's very encouragement to listen to the body, let the body almost take over in a way. And when you say art, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that.
Like, I mean, dance, so if that's a form of the meditation, how important is dance? And also listening to the music, going by the beats, how does that help in the healing process?
So I'm thinking that, there is something called sound meditation, but in this context, the way I've learned it and experienced it is that in the first part of this practice, there are 3 parts to it, as I shared in the video. So in the first part, when there's, this dynamic, expressive movement with body, with breath, sound can really support that movement if the sound is also dynamic and upbeat. And, there's sometimes they use the African drum beat, the drum roll kind of sound, or I've used music tracks from Hindi movies, which are really kind of like, really very upbeat. And it's almost like the unsaid words are keep moving, keep moving. So that's the energy that the sound gives to the body to keep going, because it can be tiring, especially if you're not used to it. And for someone who starts practicing it, it can be intense emotionally and physically. And it's known that, after these practices, sometimes people cry, sometimes they laugh, because all that emotion that's been stuck is, kind of getting unstuck. It's finding space to move, to be felt, to be expressed. And then the third component of it, where it's the encouragement is to let the music move our bodies. So choosing a music that resonates for that kind of a space of relaxed movement. And, it doesn't have to be dance moves. In fact, the encouragement is to not think about any specific dance move. The body wants to naturally, get into some specific movement, that's fine. It's just to feel really that freedom and space to move however, in whatever way. And again, the music is supporting that gentle movement.
So interestingly, I've done dynamic meditation many times, and when you broke down the practice for me into the 3 steps, the first step I want to actually break down and go in depth. So right out there, when you spoke about pushing yourself versus gentle nudging. So many times for me, I don't know how much to be okay with the pushing because it is definitely outside the comfort zone. So how do you know that sweet spot for knowing that, this is good push and this is, being hard on yourself?
It's such a meaningful question. And it's a process of experimentation is what I understand. There's no specific measure, an instrument that will measure that for us. It's going to be our body, mind, and our sense. So this, you might have heard of this metaphor of the violin and the string. So if the string is too tight or it's too loose, the music, the note won't play well. And so, I've seen musicians do this, strum the chord to see does it resonate. So it's a little experimentation. And through that experimentation process, also keeping in mind that there's no, yes, you talk about a sweet spot, but that sweet spot can be different at different times. So some days I might be doing the shaking practice for 5 minutes, the first part of it. Some days I might feel really tired in 2. So trust is the word that's coming up. Trusting the body, allowing ourselves to make mistakes, to not really get that sweet spot. It's okay if I'm not pushing, if I'm not gently nudging, or if I'm pushing a little too much. That's okay. So that's part of the whole meditation practice, to kind of just not get so caught up as we human beings do in getting it right.
I'm not sure if that also holds true for my second question. The part of that was about the stillness. Like, how important is the stillness as a practice in between out that, and how long do we know, that this much time is how much time you need to be still before you start the movement again?
Yes. So a very practical answer to your question is sometimes when it's guided, when we rely on the guide to let us know when to come into stillness, when to start moving with the music again. When we're doing it on our own, we can set that timer in the phone or whatever gadget we have to play the music for a few minutes, for there to be silence, and then to play some other music again. Or we could just gauge a little bit on our own. Again, it doesn't have to be that specific of a measure. Excuse me. What you also asked about why the stillness is important, and I think that's a really meaningful question. We don't often experience stillness in this fast-paced life that we live. And so after a dynamic movement, the stillness can be very profound. Just like if we are listening to a lot of noise and suddenly there's silence, the silence really touches us deeply. So, to experience the power of stillness, I think after the dynamic expressive practice can really help us experience the power of stillness. And because the body is so alive, help us also cultivate that ability to listen to the body. We can really sense the sensations. So it's the fine-tuning of our own listening practice.
For someone who's actually just a layman, being introduced to this, would there be any simple steps how they can get comfortable with expression as a whole? Because they might not even be used to that. So any just simple actionable steps before they deep dive into the actual meditation?
So what I'm understanding from your question is that if someone wants to explore this practice, but they find it a bit too much.
Yeah.
One thing in Qigong, the teacher from whom I learned Qigong, he used to say, just do it poorly or properly. Sometimes the fear is not being able to do it the right way. So that could be one suggestion and a way to encourage. Another thing that I'm remembering is when Dr. James Gordon facilitates this practice, he invites and encourages everyone to close their eyes because we are self-conscious, sometimes more, sometimes less. And so that helps Doing it alone. I remember the first time I practiced this, it was alone in my room. So, that I had the safety of my space, someone looking at me, and doing it in the mirror can be powerful. Can be a different kind of experience to really witness ourselves visually. Again, I'm thinking about what pre-meditation action steps or something. Well, I'm thinking maybe, if they watch a video of people practicing this, someone might become used to, or see people are doing it and it's okay. And again, this is always generally in meditation practices, in mind body skills practices, encouragement to be playful with it, to approach it with a sense of playful curiosity, interest. Like, let's see how this is. I wonder how it's going to be. I don't really like it, but I'm going to try and see. Something like that, just as, something to gently nudge again.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.